Hello, this is Patrick W. Crawford, Moo-Ack Productions, and this is going to be a little demo of the rigs that I have developed and released for free from the Mr. Herobrine Singalong Tragedy production. So I'm going to go through each of these rigs and kind of show a little bit of the ideas of how I use them, how I like to animate with them, and the way you can sort of work with these rigs. So again, I've re-downloaded them myself, so this is exactly what you'll get off of Blend Swap, so it's going to be no different from this. So when I open this, I'll try and increase the DPIs a little bit so it's easier to see. So give me a moment to do that. I should check what this was beforehand. There we go. It's like 100. A little bit better. There we go. All right. So this is the rig as you will find it when you download it. It's a little description here. A number of things I'll say are similar to what are here anyways. But in general, it's yeah, it's kind of your typical rig in a sense. It's a more boxy feel, and as opposed to my previous types, which are more of a rounded feel. Turn off X right here, it's a little bit easier to see. This is obviously pre-posed a little bit, so let me just alt the positions on everything there. And the key thing about this rig that's different from a lot of ones you will find is the FK-IK control. So what I mean by that is, you know, typically this is the center body bone I have selected here. When you move this around, obviously the feet, they are inverse kinematic, and I have the arms as forward kinematic. I find this is the most common way I like to animate, the most flexible, because the feet are obviously connected to the ground, but the arms I want to have to be free of, you know, rotation or position in 3D space. I want to be able to always move it relative to the body. But no, that's not true. I sometimes want to be able to change, and like say he's holding onto a ledge or something, and then I want the hand to be inverse kinematic as opposed to forward kinematic. So this is what these controls over here do. They go between forward and inverse. So now I can control the position of his arm because I've moved it towards the IK part of the slider. His arm is now being connected by a driver to be inverse kinematic. So I can move this now independent of that. In the same way, what if, you know, he's in free fall or something? I want more direct control over where the leg is positioned, and I want it to be kind of jittering back and forth, because I mean, you kind of see it a lot of animations if you have like someone doing a walk cycle and they're trying to make it go forward like this, and they try to counteract the fact that these arms are going back and forth like that by moving at the same time, but it looks weird. So sometimes you don't want it to be forward kinematic. So the same way, if he's like falling from somewhere, you know, off a ledge or something, I'd move his legs even to forward kinematic, so I have direct control over their positions, and it's not dependent on the keyframes and whatnot. So that's the main feature of this rig. Otherwise, it's pretty straightforward. The way I have it set up is this is the center body bone. This is an upper body bone. You can rotate it around, and it preserves the edges as sharp while the rest being smooth. If I select the body, you can see how that's set up here in the modifier stack. I have a split edge, but oh, oops, interesting. Well, some of the other rigs, I guess on the arms I set up this way. You see these the lines here that are marked as sharp, and so on this object, apparently I don't. That's interesting. Oh well. Well, the idea is it will definitely make these edges sharp, and not necessarily the rest. So that's what keeps it nice and crisp while still, I guess maybe it's on the face I have it set up this way. Yeah, here we go. So on the face, for example, we have sharp edges here, but the deformations in the middle, like if I move the face around, these are curved. So the way I do that is here on the face, these corners or these edges I've marked specifically as sharp, so that under here I don't have this. I'm only making it split the edges. Again, if you can't really see, this is the edge split modifier. I only split the edges if they are marked as sharp. So that's in general how I make that effect look. Oh, that's a strange expression. Oh well. Yeah, so like I said, this is a little bit scattered, I'm sorry, but like I said, this is the center body, upper body. This is a lower body, which I don't use too much, but it is there. It's sort of like the hips, which, you know, can do some easy dancing moves this way. It's another independent thing you can use. It's helpful. These are the knee bones. So again, this is where you the pointer for the knees, so you can change that around as necessary. I have these parented to the IK rig. I find that most convenient. So for example, if I want to rotate how his knee is pointing, I could, you know, animate this, but generally I don't. I just animate the rotation Z value of this leg IK, and that just makes it a little bit more convenient, so I don't have to animate as many objects all at once. Down here I have what I call the main, the body center main, and this I generally do not animate except if I'm moving a character from a completely different part of the scene. So if I have an animation set up here, I'll show an example of this. If I have an animation set up here where he's done some animation, maybe he's walking, and perhaps I want to reuse part of that animation later, a convenient way of making sure I only animate using the rest of the bones and not this main bone is that if I were to copy that animation and move to another part of the timeline and then just move where the position of the main bone is, it's the same animation except now I can move it somewhere else in the scene and it's not dependent. So it's a little bit more convenient. If that didn't make much sense, then ignore it, but that's why I have kind of two independent center main bones. I guess the other thing is, like, for example, the IK inverse bones are parented to this null bone, so this is, you can completely rotate, except for the head. And this is the last quirk I'll probably cover for this one, is that I have inherent rotation turned off for the head. Again, this is kind of a personal preference, the way I like to animate. I find I'm able to control it in a much more fluid way if, you know, I can control the head in a way that it's not directly inheriting the rotation from this rig or from that bone. So here under the settings, you see, where is it? I guess it's under edit mode. No, here it is. Down here I have inherit rotation turned off. Turn that way. So if I were to turn this on, then now you see it is inheriting the rotation. And so it's, you know, it's more dependent. You can tell in the animation that, like, it's connected directly. Whereas naturally, I mean, human beings, we automatically sort of level or orient our head to be sort of like a gyroscopic leveling device. So it makes more sense to me that it's not inheriting the rotation, it's completely independent. But again, that's just a preference. The face rig, I should probably explain, I guess, the layer setup. So first layer is kind of like my general macro sized motions, so arms, legs, body. The middle layer is where I have my facial animation. I typically will add or enable X-ray mode for this because I probably could have set it up a little bit better, so it's nice to see. But here you have controls for the face. Move that over here. You see you can do things like rotating the eye, moving the eyes around. They rotate, scale based on the center control. On a different layer, I do have, you know, the ability to, on this last layer here, you can move the eyes independently. Well, okay, you could go into the settings here and disable copy location, and now you can move it around independently, whatever. But generally, I don't do that. So if I go back into here, obviously it's set up so that it doesn't go off the face, so it stays on the plane of the face. I guess other things that are interesting. Eyelids, they have these independent controls. I actually really like the way this control feels. I feel I can make really dynamic shapes quite easily. So again, this is sort of like the way the main is for the rest of the rig. This is like the main for the eyebrow. Then you have these small sub controls that control the shape. And you can do all sorts of fun things with this. And I don't know, it's a much more fluid way of making animation because you can kind of emphasize really subtle asymmetry features, which really can change expressions. A slight difference in expressions can make a character's, you know, feelings shine through much better. If I go into actually texture mode, you can probably see a little bit better. If it doesn't crash, there we go. So it's in the same way I have the face or the mouth set up this way, and it's actually a little bit harder to see. So again, I'm moving away from the way I had my mouth set up previously, where I have just these controls here. Again, it's kept as a sharp edge in the edges here and in the creases, but the rest of it's smooth. And I find this is just a really fast way to make natural faces. Again, I'm not using shape keys. A lot of people, they will, you know, go under the tab here and add shape keys and animate those. That's a fine way of doing it. But I find this is much more flexible and natural to work with. You can put asymmetric sort of weird faces in there, and it's not an issue. It's just like any other keyframe. You can edit it. Here are the teeth. Pretty straightforward. And like, yeah, okay, this is the hat. And I guess the only other feature, this is a pretty standard rig. The only thing that makes this different from maybe any other rigs is I have this extra control here for the color. I'm not sure if it'll work in texture mode. Maybe it will. If I go off and back in. No, it doesn't. Well, in render mode, I actually go into render mode here. This control just basically sets the saturation value of the rig. If I disable some of the faster features, well, I can see it there. It's desaturated. If I were to go here and then re-enable back to color, then you would see it would be back into color. This was just an effect I used in the last scene of, or the last part of the music video, for not his account being corrupted or deleted. Again, that's just controlled by a driver. If you were to select the material under here, you go under the texture view and go down to saturation. I apparently don't know where I actually have this animated. Maybe it's here. Well, regardless, it's a driver that exists somewhere on this rig, and it controls the saturation value. I don't know where it went. It's a driver somewhere. Take my word for it. All right, so this is the basic notch rig. I'll make another video later about how to edit to your own rig or make it so it's your own texture. This has a few specific features like buttons and the hat, which maybe you don't want, and maybe you don't want this color driver either, so I'll do that. But otherwise, this is the basic rig. Oh, I didn't mention the fingers, but yeah, there's fingers like other rigs out there. Oh, well, maybe not. Maybe not. I have my fingers kind of set up differently. I think the single one-piece fingers that other rigs have look kind of creepy and are very overly long. So these are kind of boxy and separated and floating in the same way that the arms themselves are floating. So yeah, I don't know, I just kind of like this better. It looks more Minecrafty, more boxy in my opinion. But yeah, all right, so that's all I have to say for this rig, and there will be other rigs to come. All right, so I'm going to try and quickly go through these other rigs just to show off how they're different. I want to make this not the longest video in the world, but this is a very similar rig to the last one. I won't bother changing the DPI for this one. Again, pretty much exactly the same, except there's an extra like bow object here, which you could move or not remove, up to you. The main difference is that it's already set up with hair, which is convenient. So the way I've set this up is with an IK control. So you really just control this bone here, hair.ik, and this kind of control the rotation and position of the hair. Again, because it's an IK control or an inverse kinematic control, it's kind of separated from the motion of the rest of the body. So in this case, well, okay, I guess it's parented to that, but compared to like the head, it's not connected to the head. So moving the head around, the hair kind of moves independently. So that saves you from having to do a cloth simulation. I'm kind of a believer that if you can avoid doing a physics simulation, go for it. Don't do it, because it saves you time and frustration. But it is set up where it would be pretty easy to do a cloth simulation. I already have the vertex groups in here set up for the different areas of the hair. So like, for example, the pin. If you're doing a cloth simulation, you would use that as the pinning group to keep it in place, and the rest would be simulated. All right, moving on to let's do the villager. Again, this is the same base rig, everything else the same, except it's more villager. You have an extra one for the nose. I've segmented it into two pieces so you can kind of do extra rotation or shapes with the nose, which is convenient, I suppose. The same eyebrow control. Again, I like this because it's much more flexible. You can kind of keep it asymmetrically off to one side. Nothing else is too different. I guess one feature is that the arms are arbitrarily in this position. If I guess I made that the default, but basically you can rotate these around and it's just like the arms of another rig, and they can be perfectly straight and all that. It's not like it's actually joined and set to that position, which is convenient. And then this rig does have its cloth simulation already set up. So right now this is just the base pre-simulated posing, setting its shape. But if I were to let it simulate, which I'll do shortly, it might take a little bit, but this is actually the simulation that I use in the animation, or the one scene that I use this rig, and it will simulate fairly well. Yep. That's it for this rig. Oh, I do have some pre-animated. Well, now it's running the cloth simulation, which I didn't want to do. It has a pre-animated, pre-made animation. Jeez, I'll just turn the cloth simulation off. So this just is to do a demo or a test to make sure the cloth simulation is working right. So when you run your simulation, that's what it'll look like. But you can easily go into the curves editor, make sure that all of the bone layers are selected, for example, and then just delete all the animations, and then there it's back to the way it's normal. All right, now quickly doing the horse rig. I really like this rig. This was fun to make. Let me close this, put it to the side. So this one has lots of sort of bendy but sharp corner controls like the other ones. So the main ones are your box rigs. This controls the neck. This is the body center. Similar to the other rigs where this is the main one you control, but this controls everything uniformly. So that's like your main control. The tail is by an inverse rig. The back and front have different rotations, so you can make these independently move. For those of you who saw Grand Theft Stallion, that's how I made the sort of bouncing in the back of the horse really easily. Then you also have like this part of the neck, which makes it rotate independently slightly to the base of the neck, which is also convenient. This kind of rotates the head a little bit. You can only really do small motions there to make it, otherwise it kind of looks disconnected. But then you also have controls for the hair, so you can kind of make it look simulated by offsetting, for example, if the head is going, if it goes from here to there, you would offset the animation perhaps of this going from like there to there to make it look like it's simulated without actually being simulated. Again, the actual face is also rather convenient. It has some independent controls, and you can rotate it slightly for those, very slight touches. I didn't make a tongue, but it wouldn't be too hard to do. It's a similar setup. And yeah. IK controls, I didn't add inverse or FK, IK switching controls for this just because I never came across the issue where I needed to have forward kinematics for the feet. But, at the very least, you can always just go over to the bone panel, or the constraints panel, select the bone that has the IK, and then you can animate this parameter just fine. And the other rigs, it was just convenient to have a bone that controlled the animation, but you can just keyframe this. And that's what actually I did for previous animations that I've worked on. Yep, that is the horse rig. And that's all I have to really say right now in terms of the rigs. Like I said, I will make another video later which shows you how to edit a base rig to have like your own character, your own skin, and how you can add extra small details to make it more, personalized and unique. Like I said, that's coming, and that's all I have for now, so thank you so much. Moo-Ack.